Okay, so if you're out there trying to build, a meaningful investment portfolio, you absolutely know that feeling, the grind of those first few years. You save consistently,
Yeah.
you try to max out contributions, but the total just, well, it creeps up so slowly, it's honestly disheartening sometimes.
Yeah, it really can be.
It feels like you're doing everything right, but the rewards, they seem minimal.
Yeah.
We often think growth should be, like, linear, right? Save 100 pounds, growth is a straight line.
That's the common assumption.
What if that feeling, that slow motion, isn't actually a problem with your strategy? What if it's proof you're hitting the steepest, but maybe the most powerful part of financial acceleration?
That perception, that feeling of really slow growth at the start, that's probably the single biggest psychological hurdle in investing. It really is.
And that's what we're diving into today. We're looking closely at a source called the first 100,000 pounds, compound interest acceleration. And it fundamentally challenges that linear idea of how wealth builds up. Okay, our mission here is pretty simple, really. We want to give you this counterintuitive view of time and money to show why those early years are somehow both the hardest and the most valuable. Right. So we're going to show you exactly why hitting that first big milestone, financially speaking, is absolutely the toughest part. And then crucially, how once you've done that heavy lifting, the growth afterwards speeds up so dramatically, it's almost unrecognizable compared to the start.
Yeah, the difference is stark.
So this deep dive, it's about validating that early struggle you might be feeling and maybe offering a strategy to really lean into that exponential curve when it comes. Most people just assume, save consistently, steady progress. But when you actually look at the data, and this is what really jumped out at me from the source, the time you need to invest to build that foundation, it's heavily skewed. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yes.
What did the data actually show about how much effort goes into that initial phase?
Well, what's fascinating, truly, is the weight given to that first benchmark. This analysis makes a really central and I think surprising claim, achieving the first 100,000 pounds invested. It represents a huge 25% of the total time needed for an investor to eventually reach a 1 million pound portfolio.
Wait, say that again, 25%.
25%, you heard right. A full quarter of your entire investment journey is basically eaten up just getting to the first 10th of that 1 million pound goal.
Wow. Okay. A quarter of the time for just the first 10% of the money. That statistic is, it's kind of brutal, isn't it?
It is.
But it's critical for managing expectations, I guess. It makes sense of that sinking feeling when you look at your statement and, the market dips and wipes out your whole month's savings.
It's not just a feeling, though. It's the math. It's exponential math being, well, initially unforgiving, but ultimately incredibly powerful.
Okay.
This difficulty at the start, it's purely down to how compound interest works. In the beginning, your capital base, your principal, it's small, so the interest or growth it earns is tiny.
Right. Pennies almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your own savings, your contributions are doing like 90% of the work. Accumulation isn't linear because you're spending years just building the engine, the compound interest engine. Only later do you actually get to ride in the vehicle it powers. That first 100,000 pounds, it's earned mostly through sheer discipline and efforts. It's not really market magic at that stage.
So thinking about that 25% statistic, if you're stuck in those frustrating early years, that number is actually the best argument for just sticking with it for consistency.
Absolutely.
Because if you can push through the time needed for that first big milestone, you're basically guaranteeing that the other 75% of your time is going to deliver, 9 times the growth?
That's the idea.
You're essentially buying future time, but at a massive discount now.
Precisely. You're front-loading the effort for disproportionate future gain. Okay, to make this really concrete, the analysis we looked at uses a fictional case study. And this really illustrates the whole time acceleration thing perfectly. It lets us compare, apples to apples. The time for the first 100-pound K versus the time for the last 100-pound K. Let's slow down here and look at these numbers because they really define what financial acceleration means.
Yeah, the numbers are quite striking. They really prove the point about nonlinearity. The study contrasts the time it took this fictional investor to hit that crucial first 100,000-pound milestone, which took 7.84 years in their model.
Okay, nearly 8 years. Yeah, almost 8 years. And it compares that to the time it takes to pile up the later chunks of 100,000 pounds. If we fast forward, zoom out to the final stages, getting close to that 1 million pound goal, the speed increase is just, it's astonishing because the portfolio is now growing mostly on its own, largely independent of new savings.
Right. The snowball's really rolling downhill by then.
Yeah.
Exactly. The data shows the final 100,000-pound chunk. So the jump from 900,000 pounds to the full 1 million pounds it's achieved in dramatically shorter time, just 1.35 years. 1.35 years. Okay, that's the number that should really stick with people. You're talking, what is that? A six-fold increase in speed.
Almost. Something like that, yeah.
The time for the first 10% was nearly 8 years. And the time for the final 10% was just over a year. The difference between 7.84 years and 1.35 years. That's not just faster progress. It means the return on your capital has finally just dwarfed the return on your effort. That is the exact takeaway. That massive acceleration highlights the core message here. Financial success really, really favors those who use long-term consistency and time.
Yeah.
Once that principal amount gets big enough, it just takes over the heavy lifting from your monthly contributions. Your money starts working harder than you are, basically.
Okay, so given how vital time and consistency are, especially with that high psychological barrier of the first 100-pound K, what does the source suggest we actually do while we're waiting for compounding to really kick in? Because this is where it gets really interesting, right? The source offers a practical lever, something we can actually pull to speed things up, especially in that middle phase. Right, it doesn't just point out the time problem. It proposes a tactical solution, something to enhance the compounding effect. The specific method it details to accelerate growth, particularly in those middle years, involves strategically using dividend exchange-traded funds, or ETFs. Okay, ETFs. So just to clarify for everyone listening, exchange-traded funds, they're like baskets of stocks or bonds, trade like a single stock. But why focus specifically on dividend ETFs for acceleration? What's the magic there?
Well, it's all about creating this sort of internal cash flow loop. These dividend ETFs are designed to pay out regular cash payments, the dividends from the companies they hold.
Okay, and the key part is this. When those payments are immediately reinvested back into the fund, it essentially turbocharges the compounding. You see, when your portfolio is small, maybe those dividends only buy you a tiny fraction of a new share. Right, not very exciting.
Not initially. But once the portfolio gets bigger, say 200,000 pounds, 300,000 pounds, suddenly those quarterly dividends become pretty significant sums of cash, enough to buy several whole new shares every quarter, automatically. Okay, so you're getting growth from the assets hopefully appreciating, and you're getting this cash flow from dividends, and that cash instantly buys more assets, which then generate even more cash flow down the line.
Precisely.
It's like compounding on top of compounding. It bypasses the need for you to always rely on your salary savings to add new principal.
Exactly right. It speeds up the timeline because you've added this second kind of automated layer of contribution. Now, it's worth noting, while the analysis focused on that 100,000-pound benchmark using pounds, the specific examples of funds mentioned for this strategy often tend to be U.S.-listed funds, though they're generally accessible globally.
Okay, that's an important nuance. The underlying math is universal, even if the specific ticker symbols might be U.S.-focused in the source material.
Yes. So for people looking for concrete examples, funds that actually help with this acceleration strategy, the source did specifically list a few. FDRR, FDV, SCHD, and SPYD. It mentioned those as dividend ETFs that fit this kind of profile. That's correct. Those were the examples given.
So that really ties the theoretical advantage of nonlinear growth directly to an actionable investment decision you can make.
Yes, it provides that bridge between just understanding the analysis and actually applying it. It helps shift the investor's focus maybe away from worrying so much about short-term market ups and downs and more towards optimizing the long-term mechanism, the automation of growth. So look, to bring this whole deep dive together, what have we found? We've really identified two critical components for reaching, say, that 1 million portfolio goal. First, there's that high nonlinear investment of time, that crucial 25% needed just to get the first 100,000 pounds in place.
Right, the hard yards.
The hard yards, exactly. And second, there's the strategic use of reinvested dividends, maybe through vehicles like those ETFs, to accelerate the process once your capital base is actually big enough to generate meaningful cash flow on its own.
So what does this all mean for you listening? It means you probably need to fundamentally change how you expect wealth to build up. Shift from thinking linear to thinking exponential. The toughest, slowest, most discouraging work, the sheer effort needed in those first, 7 or 8 years, it's all front-loaded.
Completely front-loaded.
Yeah.
So if you're saving diligently right now, but not really seeing the big rewards yet, just remember, you are currently putting in the maximum effort for what looks like the smallest return. But that dynamic, it is absolutely set to flip and potentially flip dramatically in your favor down the line. And that brings us really nicely to the final thought, the provocative question we want to leave you with. If time truly is the ultimate multiplier for compound interest, I mean, if that final jump, 900K to 1 million pounds, takes less than a year and a half,
Yeah.
then what small, consistent action can you take today? Something small but consistent. What action will have the greatest impact 5, maybe 10 years from now when that portfolio really starts accelerating in those final years towards that million-pound milestone? Maybe the focus shouldn't be on speed right now, but just on optimizing the weight.